name is Becca and welcome to Nearby Nature. This new video series is going to bring the wilderness and the great outdoors right into your home. So every video will be a brand new topic that we can learn about and do activities for, and in that way we're going to discover nature together. So I'm really excited to share all of my knowledge with you and to answer any questions that you might have. Without further ado, let's get started on our very first topic today. I brought some new friends that I would like to introduce to you. In here, I have a bunch of earthworms. So I am going to get you up close and personal to these little guys, and I'm going to teach you how you can create your very own earthworm habitat, temporary of course. So without further ado, let's get into learning. I am going to bring the camera down a little bit so we can get really up close and personal with these new little guys. Awesome, can't wait. So in the wild, earthworms like to live in dark, damp, wet, cool, shady environments. So you'll often find an earthworm in the dirt, in nice, wet, moist soil. And you'll often find earthworms underneath leaves, dead leaves, because earthworms actually eat dead leaves. So I've included some dead leaves right here for our earthworm friends. And then you'll notice that I have a lot of really nice wet soil in here. So we are gonna get our hands a little dirty right now, and I'm going to find a friend, a little earthworm friend. And I actually found one right in there, under the leaves, right where I knew they would be. Nothing wrong with getting a little dirt on our hands. So, I have our very first friend, and the first thing I want you to notice is when I touch him, how wriggly this little guy is, right? And the reason that these earthworms are wriggly right when you pull them out is because earthworms are afraid of a certain animal that really wants to eat them. Birds. Birds love to eat earthworms, some types of birds. And so, what a bird will do, let's pretend this is my pecking beak of a bird, searching through the dirt for an earthworm, it starts to peck, trying to pick up the earthworm. And the more the earthworm wriggles around really fast, it makes it really hard for the bird to capture it. And then the bird gets tired or bored and it starts to leave. And then the earthworm is safe where it can bury under its safe little dirt environment again. So I have a couple earthworms here, and I'm going to bring out another one so that our friend can have a play date. And so I can have more opportunities to get my hands nice and muddy. Good day, young fellow. So now we have two earthworms right here. Get them up nice and close so you can see them moving around. Yeah! Say hello. Earthworms actually have to be wet all the time. They cannot dry out. If their skin dries out, they will die. So they cannot be in places with a lot of sunlight or a lot of dryness. They have to just be really nice and cool and wet and under that dirt. Now, something really special and weird about earthworms. As I mentioned, earthworms like to eat dead leaves, right? And you'll never guess what they poop out. Earthworms poop out soil, dirt. It's true. So, every time you are gardening or digging around in the soil, you know what you're really digging around in? Worm poop. It's true. So another really amazing thing about earthworms is that earthworms actually have not one, but 5 hearts in their body. And this is super important actually. If a bird were to peck at an earthworm and actually be able to grab it, sometimes an earthworm is actually able to separate its body so that it might have a chance to escape the bird. Part of its body would be left with the bird and be food, but another part of the worm's body would survive and be able to crawl away back into its habitat. Now this is interesting, and it can only happen because this worm has 5 hearts. But sometimes if a worm separates in not the right place, it won't work. Maybe both new parts of the worm will still die. Maybe both parts of the worm will survive and it will turn into two different worms. Or maybe one part of the worm will survive, but the other part will die and it might become bird food at that point. Of course, we don't want to try and stress out these worms enough to make them separate because we're not trying to eat them. We don't want to ever stress out any creatures or wild animals. We always want to be gentle and kind to our little creatures that are visiting in from nature and from the wild because they're alive and they do have important work to do in nature. The next thing that I want to say about earthworms that is really super weird is that worms actually don't have any eyeballs. So this worm is just feeling around, sensing the warmth of my hand, sensing vibrations, little movements in my hand, trying to figure out where the next safe place for it to go and to hide is. So these worms are always seeking, like I said, wet soil that is cool and not too warm, not dry, nice and damp and in the shade, and underneath a nice protective tasty bed of leaves so that it can eat. And the last and the most interesting, in my opinion, thing that I want to say about these earthworms is that an earthworm is in one body both male and female. A male is a word for a boy, and a female is a word for a girl. So earthworms are both a boy and a girl in one single earthworm body. Wild. So those are our little friends, and I will show you where I'm about to put them back in this really nice, damp, cool little habitat that I've created for them. It is really easy to make your very own earthworm habitat. All you need is a little container like this, little Tupperware. You need some nice dirt. You need a couple of old, dead, dry leaves, and you need plenty of water. You don't want to overwater it and flood it because the earthworms, they do not like if their dirt is flooded with too much water, but you want it to be really nice and moist. You also want to keep this container nice and far away from the sunlight because if it gets too dry in there, the worms will die. And the last thing is that you don't want to put a cover on top of this. And you don't have to. The earthworms, as long as the container is big enough, they won't be able to escape. What you can do is put a cover a little bit over it just to keep in that shade and that moisture, but you want to make sure to leave it cracked and not completely on so that there can still get plenty of oxygen and air into these habitats for these worms. All right, nature buddies, thank you so much for learning with me today. Let's bid a nice farewell to our earthworm friends that we made today. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for spending time on this very special day with us. Now, I am off to go wash my hands. Announcement, please do not wipe your dirty hands on the walls of your parents' homes. It is impolite. Thank you, nature buddies, and I will see you next time. And I hope you all have a wonderful and radical and outdoorsy day. Bye!